Let's turn to the other hot what do they call it, hot ticket, which is health care. What would you do about Obamacare? It's now law.
Right.
Okay. And you still have the president who advocated this legislation as the president. So outright appeal may not be in the cards. But that's, you can make that judgment. I'll put it as a question. What do we do? What would you want to see done about Obamacare with the new Congress?
All right. First of all, I will pass on to Chris to respond to that, because you may recall the book is unusual in one regard. There was the one topic we had difficulty agreeing with among ourselves was healthcare.
Oh, really?
And it turned out that the students wanted to follow a more moderate approach. And therefore, you know, I said, well, that is great, and then I'm going to write a much more radical approach. And so we have one chapter on healthcare and then another chapter on health proper. So I will pass on to Chris the discussion about the Obama.
Yeah, but isn't that the nub of the issue? You say right up front, and I think this applies to all of you, that you need to make a distinction first and foremost, which is too seldom made, between health and health care. Right. Those are two distinguishable matters. And if you can't, I should say separable matters, and if you can't distinguish them, then you get into trouble like we already have.
All right, but why don't we take health care first?
Pick up the gauntlet and run with it.
Okay. Well, I'd personally like to see Obamacare eliminated, and I don't think that that's politically in the cards in the very near future. I think that some of the provisions should be scaled back. For example, right now, over the next several years, we're looking at $1 trillion plus in expenditures when the United States is running record deficits. One of the keys in the future to solving the healthcare crisis is going to be understanding that people need to ultimately live within the budget constraints of society. By this, I mean that people are going to have to work longer, and the retirement age for Medicare is definitely going to have to be risen, because unfortunately the system is unsustainable. Right now, the numbers that we have in the book, the numbers published by the government, are something like right around $50 trillion in unfunded liabilities just for Medicare. And with such numbers...
Did you say 150?
No, I said 50 trillion.
So that's what I thought you said. Okay.
Trillion.
50 trillion.
50 trillion.
Yes, it's incredible. It boggles the mind.
And you know, when we start to look at the way that this new bill is going to influence those types of healthcare expenditures in this country, it's going to drive the amount of money we spend per person further up. And
well, if you deal with the unfunded obligations of Social Security, Medicare, and now Obamacare, we don't have any money left for anything else.
Yeah, well, we didn't have any money when Obama signed Obamacare, and that was the issue.
Good point.
So, unfortunately, I think when we look at this, some tough decisions are going to have to be made. And some of the spirit of the bill to help insure more people is a very noble cause, and something I think everybody would like to see is more people, and people with pre-existing conditions should have access to treatment. And this could have been done for probably about 20 or 30 billion a year, as opposed to what we're going to ultimately run, which will be probably in the trillions.
Let me interject to say, you remind me of what's called the politics of good intentions.
Yeah, exactly.
I have good intentions. The rest of you can pay for them.
Exactly, exactly. And that's what we ultimately, I think, came to the conclusion, that this is just a bill that doesn't provide great incentives for economic growth. It doesn't foster people to start looking and managing their own health care. In other words, what we need is more transparency, and the bill fails at this. If a hip replacement costs X amount of dollars at one hospital and Y amount at another, in any other sector, the consumer is going to look and evaluate the costs of both options and choose the one that ultimately provides the most value. In healthcare, people always want the best. They want the Cadillac plan, so to speak. And it's because ultimately they're not the ones who are paying for it directly. And this is going to lead to explosive costs in healthcare, which we're seeing. We've been seeing it for past decade especially. And unfortunately, what we're doing is we're increasing our expenditures on something that's not necessarily adding to the productive potential of the economy.
Okay, from the standpoint of the incentive of the recipients of health services, would you say that this bill takes us in the wrong direction, and it enables a greater dependence on third-party payments?
Oh, absolutely.
You know, I know there's, other than the direct payments out of my pocket, somebody else is paying the bill. A greater reliance on that?
Well, it just, I think it brings it now to new heights, and unfortunately...
So again, we're violating the market, aren't we?
Yeah, and unfortunately, so long as we have a system in place where people aren't paying the direct costs, they're not managing their own care, they have no incentive to stay fit, to keep costs down, and I think that ultimately that's a disastrous set of circumstances under which to operate one of the 20, you know, it's going to be 20% of the economy in a few years. Right now it's about 16 or 17%. So,
you know, what about the lauded attempt to deal with the rapid rises in the cost of health care, which is one of the main reasons for getting into the bill and actually passing the bill? What about the incentives to reduce costs?
Do you want to address that?
I think your chapter deals with that a little bit
more.
Well,
all right. Let me again present a very different viewpoint on all of this.
It's what you call the value investment approach?
No. That is still his his approach.
Oh, I see.
All right. You know, my field of expertise is economic development and economic growth, and of course, economic growth aspects of theory are included in the book, and so on and so forth. But in economic development, you know, one of the things that you notice is that many countries in the world are experiences increases in lifespan without having increases in healthcare. Therefore, the question is, well, why is that the case? How come that these countries are doing so much better now than they used to be? And of course, the answer is, again, from an economic perspective point of view, that, you know, people are eating better. There are better public health measures taken, particularly with regard to water, with regard to sewer, with regard to, you know, the quality of some foods, in particular milk, which is very important.
How about smoking?
Smoking is, you know, another example, you know, making people understand that smoking, you know, can be a problem. Therefore, you see, from my point of view, and here we do differ, the students and I do differ very significantly.
Really?
From my point of view...
They dare to differ with their professor?
Oh, absolutely. What people don't realize is that at the margin, the impact of vast amounts of healthcare provisions really add relatively little to human welfare. And if you accept that point of view, then you come to the realization that we should be paying attention to health, not to healthcare. Now, this doesn't deny that healthcare has a role to play. And you know, from a historical point of view, for example, when you had the development of antibiotics, I mean, the antibiotics had a major impact on the health of the population. Mm-hmm. Right now, we have some developments in the healthcare sector, particularly with regard to heart disease and, you know, the whole field of, you know, taking care of illnesses related to the heart, that yes, you know, those are making contributions to the health of the population. But to be quite honest with you, I feel that people have a great deal of misperceptions as to the effectiveness of many drugs that they take. And I am talking about medical drugs. Mm-hmm. You know, people have think that they go ahead, well, they take this pill and this pill is going to cure them. Well, what they don't understand is that this pill has been approved in the marketplace by the federal government, because the pill relative to a placebo only does a little bit better, but a little bit better that is statistically significant.